back on the air.
Johnny?
You're still afraid.
I'm not afraid.
There wasn't a sign of life left.
We've got to do something.
Why don't you just keep calm?
You're telling us we gotta risk our lives just because somebody might need help.
Yeah, something like that. I dragged you out there and beat those things.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Haven't you had enough?
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Good evening. Welcome to NIGHTCAST. I always like seeing that opening video, which was put together by Chris Meidel. It's lots of fun and does a great job with editing our promo videos. But anyway, again, welcome to the podcast. We're going to be getting right into it here because we have a lot of stuff to talk about as we've promoted tonight. We have a guest from Night of the Living Dead, Sharon Carroll, and we're going to introduce her in a second. But first, we're bringing on our good friend John Vullo.
Maybe not everyone's friend.
Well, I'm sure you'll make some enemies along the way, but for now, everybody likes you. So anyway, John's here tonight because John was instrumental. He was the guy who found our guest, who located her and has been doing lots of research on the unidentified people that appeared and worked in Night of the Living Dead, as well as a lot of the piecing together of the production, how it was done, things that areas that we really have never gotten into before with all the research. So John's got his murder board up on his wall, and he's figuring out how it all happened and went down in 1967. So
well, it's a big puzzle to me. That's why I find it so exciting. There's no greater thrill that I kind of get, whether it's anything that I'm very interested in, whether it's music related and trying to transcribe a song that like no one's ever gotten correctly, or trying to figure out when things were shot in a movie that I love. I just find it very engaging trying to put this sort of puzzle together. And then, obviously the excitement and when it's like, oh, this actually is what had happened, or, just learning stuff about that. There's no real thrill like it for me. And sometimes I guess I go a little overboard with it, and annoy everyone else because not everyone's working at my speed. But as I keep on trying to tell Jim when I'm annoying him for things, it's like I'm trying to get the totality of evidence of like everything that I can possibly find, know who every name is, seen every picture, and then I can start to sort of know what I'm working with and like what's actually a piece of information I never heard before, or what's something that I've heard before, or a name or whatever.
I mean, you'll get no protest from me. I mean, I'm happy that somebody's doing all that. Just to in all my research, or like when I was Jeff Carney and I were working together, which was before I knew most of the Night of the Living Dead cast. I'd seen them at conventions and stuff, but other than the main people, our whole goal was to find everybody else that wasn't normally being, spoken to, or you didn't really have their perspective on it. And the whole reason we really wanted to find all those people, interview them, and have a documentary about them was because, if you were George Romero, this was your first movie in a long career. And so you're not going to remember, a lot of the details, because you're going to remember what you recently worked on. Not so much, something that was 30, 40, 50 years or more old. And our view is that, we talked to some of the extra people that kind of came into the orbit in the production of Night of the Living Dead. It may piece together a better view of the story, like exactly what you're talking about. You want to know the totality of, how it was made, and what all those little details were and what it was like. There was not much independent film production at that time, especially nothing that was making a huge, that would eventually make a huge splash like this film did. So
And I
those
was
of
so
us who are fans, we
oh,
want
yeah,
to know all those details, and these are things that are probably, if you worked on it, whether you worked on it at the level that George Romero did, which was basically conceiving it, filming it, and piecing it together literally by hand. Um, you know, you're not going to. It's not going to have the same impact upon you as it does the audience that it reaches out to. And so we know what we want to, know about this, and it's
yeah,
really hard to get that from people that actually worked on an artist or actor or production person or anybody involved in like a creative endeavor like this. They make it and then it gets put out there.
or
And
even the people that are in it, because I've talked to so many relatives of people where they said like, oh yeah, my father, mother didn't think it was that big of a deal, which is like
right.
surprising to me because it's like, I remember when I first, and I wanted to say about Autopsy, like I was so excited when I got that, and it's funny, I got that DVD before I even met you or knew who you were. I just found it online and said, this is great. This is something, just for me, and listening to Herb Summer and LMA and all them. But I remember talking to Ken Peters. I was there at his first convention in October, I think in 2023. And I was saying like, you were in this like film and you didn't like tell anybody. Like to me, I remember saying like I would use this as like my email signature, like I was in Night of the Living Dead, because it's one thing where it's you just sort of an extra in a movie and that's it. But one of the things that I've said about this film, which is so to me interesting, is trying to think of a movie as renowned and well known as Night of the Living Dead that has so many just regular people in it. Like I said, an LMA that she just happened to live near the farmhouse, and she's, she signs autographs and is totally sweet. But these are, a majority, a huge majority, like 99% of the people that are in the film are not actors. They're just regular people. So like I would be using that, as a badge. Like I'm going to put
To back that up, I mean, people of that generation, that wasn't important. Soon after, I mean, by the time George was making Dawn of the Dead, and definitely by the time he made Day of the Dead, people were begging to be zombies. They
yeah.
were begging to grab entrails and chomp into them. So, it's uh, you know, at that point, that the generation that grew up on Night and other films, looked at that situation that, like you're saying, and just it's like any other kind of creative endeavor, whether it's playing in bands or
Oh
making
yeah.
movies, whatever. The audience has a perception of it, a fantasy of what it is. Doesn't
Oh
maybe
yeah.
really know what the work that goes into it, and the people that are involved in it aren't going to get that same feeling. That's one of the things that stuck with me about what Herbert Summers said. He was such a open and funny guy, and he said, when he saw the movie, he thought it was funny because he's in it and he's getting shot, and he goes, he couldn't get, but he understood he couldn't get the feeling that people got out of it. And so,
I think Gary said that
you
too.
know,
Same kind
yeah,
of
it's,
thing.
if you worked on it, you're going to see like all the seams and how it was pieced together and so forth. Even if, you're just kind of coming into the production for a few days and you're seeing some stuff that's shot and you have no idea what the director or the editor or the filmmakers are going to actually do with all that and put it together and put music on it and craft it into a complete film. So but when
music too, people not knowing the song as well as like the audience members and forgetting, like, how can you forget Eruption?
Right. So because something like that is something that the musician did at that time, was focused on, intensely focused on doing at that time, and then they move on to something else. Maybe if it was the only thing that they ever did, it would have they'd have a little bit more cognizant focus on it. But music is great for that. If you just stay in one area, you don't really, there's really not much point to it. So when you do something, it's all about like leaving it and moving on to what's the next thing. But so, I mentioned about when we were searching, Jeff Carney and I were searching for people to make this documentary, Autopsy of the Dead. We basically just went with the credits. So we knew, we kind of had an idea of who we were looking for. Well, maybe this person, and that's a good reason why we didn't find, and they're not in the documentary. We didn't find Paula Richards or Sharon Carroll because we tried, but those names were very common, a little bit tough now. But now you've taken it to a completely different level because you're not only finding and up overturning stones that people didn't even know existed. So you're finding names that nobody even knew or had any kind of like idea that where to even start to find out that this person is so and so in the film. So what's your like basic operation to tackle that kind of problem?
Well, it's just I really need names. Names are the hardest things to come by. But what I wanted to say before, like, you were going where what was in the credits and trying to find and talk to people. I'm sort of like doing this stuff. It's not like I'm hitting home runs. Like I'm on third base already and what I mean by that is like, if this was 10 years ago, I wouldn't be able to do this. And it's because of so many the photographs that you got from Marilyn Eastman's collection, which shows clear images of specific people that I can talk to somebody and maybe they'll say, oh, that looks like this person, or that reminds me of this person, or I can look at somebody and say, oh, that looks like them. They're not lying because I have this photo. Obviously, the 4K restoration, which is incredible because the resolution is so great that now people that are kind of blurry in the background, now there's actually, no matter how obscure they are, now there's actually some decent shot of them. And even just the internet with like one of the really good things that I'm fortunate with finding, doing all this research is that the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is actually excellent at just archiving stuff. So like the entire paper is basically online that you can pretty much search using websites like MyHeritage and stuff. And I mean, I don't want to make this sound like a downer because it's an unfortunate aspect of it, but like obituaries are are really helpful because even if it's someone that I suspect, I can get a name of a wife or a kid, the children or whatever, and then I can find those people and follow up. And having all this stuff online, that maybe 10 years ago didn't exist, would be impossible aside from someone just telling you like, oh, this person was in the film, and they might actually be in the film, but you can't spot them because like it's like the day for night shots that aren't in the film. They could be buried in the background somewhere and there's no good photo of them. Or it's like some of the ghouls that are in the pump scene that are in the background that, for 2 seconds they're on screen and that's it. So they're not lying, but you can't actually find them.
Well, actually the obituaries, that was a big thing were a huge aspect when we were putting together Autopsy. First of all, found that people that we wanted to meet had either just died or just passed away, or you know, it because at that time obituaries were being put online. It ended up being a big resource. So if we couldn't talk to the person, we were at least able to talk to their family and or a family member, and they could get us like a photo of the person. If it was somebody behind the scenes who's not normally seen, we could get, we could have at least some kind of representation of them to say, to put a face to the name. And so that was like a helpful thing. As unfortunate as that, we missed several people just by like either a few months or a year or something like that. If we had done it like 2 years earlier, we maybe would have had like 4 or 5 more people. But at the same time, there were people that passed away before that were interviewed for autopsy, and then autopsies completed and they passed away in the interim between, I'd say it was like maybe 10 months to a year. So, it's and we were able to find other people who weren't in the credits by talking to family members or talking to, like everybody that we interviewed. That was, one of the first questions, even before we got to the interview, was who else do you know that was in the film?
Yeah. And that's exactly
people
right.
like Ella May were, she's like a great, just a great source for all of, how this movie was made, because with a lot of little details, because she was the one who was able to say specifically there was these people from Evans City, and it actually wasn't a lot of people from Evans City. Like, you hear that the film was shot up in Evans City, you assume, oh, it was all these people from the town were extras. And LMA said, no, there was only like, 5 of us. And all of those other extras were from Pittsburgh. It was people that George Romero and company, or Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman, knew through all of their connections, doing, production work, film production, audio production, radio, in Pittsburgh. So another question for you, John, before we bring on our guest. So how much simultaneously with looking for people, you're also kind of like putting together how this movie was made, and like a sequence of how things were pieced together, and maybe they backtracked over a particular plot point and did something else, or like we talk about with the Day for Night shoot didn't really work, so they had to fill that in with some more ghoul shots. How much does that help you to, like, doing that work? How much does that help you to also find people?
I don't think really so much. I think that's just more of my curiosity of just knowing when things were. But sometimes it could help. The only time it really helps is sort of verify if I'm talking to somebody, if they mentioned somebody else that was there that day. So like one of the things that I did, this is how it basically started, was I think I was watching one of the old Nightcasts, and Jim had mentioned like, oh, you can tell what ghouls were there because of the groups and whatever. I said, oh, that's a really good idea. So one of the first things that I did was I took all the ghoul shots, because at the time that's all I really cared for, is just finding ghouls. No disrespect to the posse guys and stuff. That was, I for some reason was just in love with the ghoul stuff. So I started to group them and said, oh, okay, this person, these are the scenes and all that stuff. And then I started to itemize, who was there that day and who we don't know. And by doing that and finding a new name, I can sort of put that in there. So I know, like, okay, for this day, we know all these people, but like for this day, we don't know. And then if I meet somebody and they give me a name, I can say like, well, there's like a couple of people that we don't know. This might lead to something. So it's not so much like when the movie was shot. It's just knowing when really those groups were. And it's my own morbid curiosity of like, hey, when was that thing shot? When was this,
I mean, that if you any kind of like work, researching this movie, I mean, it becomes clear that there's different days
Yeah.
that have different groups of ghouls, and the makeup changes and the wardrobe changes, and so that was more or less like, I mentioned it to you because that was more or less known, but it was nothing that I really dove into, and at any kind of like really detailed level,
Yeah.
like you've eventually done. So
Just I had the time to do it. But that was, again, when I do these things, I do them for me because I want to know. And that's how it basically started, by like telling you guys this and then saying, hey, you should help us. So the thing that really sparked it off was once I felt like I had the backing of Image 10, that's when I felt like, okay, because I need to use, I'm a nobody. I'm just some guy that likes to film a lot. But if I'm working with these people that made the film, it gives me more gravitas to like, okay, I'm not going to feel that uncomfortable reaching out to this random person because I'm not just doing it because I'm a fan. I'm doing it for them so they can understand the film or whatever, it may be. But I'm sort of doing it on their behalf. And that sort of takes away some of the uncertainty. I don't know if I should just talk to them or whatever. I can say, okay, no, I'm doing this for like a more official reason. So, I can end up just going full force and not feel. And I remember asking you, like, I need you to tell me it's okay so I can just randomly text these people.
I don't know why you're asking. I don't know why you're asking me. I mean, all the people that I've ever contacted think
I have to use your guys' names because I don't want to make somebody angry or like say, oh, what is this for? But it's like, yeah, if I'm doing this for Jim and Gary and Image 10, I need to use your
look, if somebody's going to get mad at you because you contacted them about being in Night of the Living Dead, then maybe they shouldn't have been in the film in the first place. Did anybody ever?
What's only happened like?
But I have like so many stories about that. It was never, never.
Well, for the
yeah,
most part,
it's weird calling people or reaching out to them and saying, "Hey, were you in Night of the Living Dead?"
Well, what's really frustrating for me is like finding them sometimes is relatively easy. It's getting them to respond to me that's difficult. And I try to do it by like increments, saying, okay, I'm just going to send out an email. But the problem is the emails that I find might not actually go to them. So then I'll try another email, or then maybe I'll try the wife. I'll try the son. I'll try somebody's email first. And then maybe I'll go to send a text message. And it's really funny because sometimes like I'll send an email to somebody and 2 weeks go by and then I send another email and I'll just say something like, is this you? If this isn't you, let me know and I'll stop emailing you. Give me some sort of confirmation back. And then I'll get like an email from, oh yeah, that was me. And then they give me all this information, So it's like I go from like, am I bothering them to now all of a sudden like, oh, I'm going to bring my brother in and we're going to talk. And that's happened before. I end up having these really nice conversations, but it's like, I emailed you like a month ago and now you finally get back to me. And there's one person, I mean, I can just say his name because he's known, Jack Gibbons. It's really frustrating because I cannot contact any single person in his family. His wife, his kids, the wives of the kids, just to touch base, and even if I get a response back to say this isn't me or I don't want to be involved with it, that's enough. But there's not one single person I've tried to reach out to more that I haven't gotten literally anything back, not even an email or a text to say, to bugger off. But that's the most annoying part is really, making sure that my message gets out there. But for the most part, everyone's been really super nice and, they're happy to, because I'm saying like, we want to basically memorialize your family member on the website, that they had such a contribution, whether they think it was big or small. I want other people to know that and put them out, up there. So I think that helps out a lot. And that's why I said I have to do it through you guys because like I need that sort of official backing that it's not just me being a crazy fan just wanting to know this stuff. It's to say like, no, we're doing this out of a place of love and respect that we love the film so much. We want to know all these people that are in it and, give us a little bio. We want to know about, these people, whether it's a long bio or not. Just, these are the people that helped contribute this, film that we've been talking about for 55 years. It doesn't seem like it's going away. So, to me,
there are, we've never taken the attitude that there are any small contributions. They're all important contributions. So, but before we let too much time go away, so we'll bring our guest on here, but I want to say, well, there she is. So welcome, Sharon.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you. We'll have to talk not as loud as so we don't drown her out here. But I wanted to give a shout out to all the people watching here. A lot of the regulars, Will Phelps, and I see Tony all the way from Australia. So this must be like Nightcast must be like the early morning viewing over there. So thanks for watching, Tony, and Dwayne's on, and Night of the Living Dead is watching. What do you know? So that must be our Facebook page. So anyway, if anybody has questions, hang on to them. You have questions for Sharon, hang on to them. We will get those up. But first, John and I will talk with Sharon about some of the basic things. So Sharon, how did you get involved in Night of the Living Dead?
I got involved because I had a friend when I was in college. She and I worked together during the day and went to college at night at Pitt. And she and her husband lived in the same building I lived in. And one day she said, "My husband's trying to put together a movie. Would you help us out and come and take a small part in it?" And I said, "I'd love to. Something different." I was happy to help out.
And who was that?
Oh, okay. That was Jacqueline Striner and Russ Striner.
And Russ Striner, great.
Yes.
And what was your impression when you found out what this movie was going to be? This horror movie with the dead coming back to life, and you're one of the dead.
What fun. Just so fun. I thought it was great.
And just broadly explain, what was it like? What was your impression of being out at this farmhouse, this real farmhouse location, and all of the people who were involved in the shoot?
It was fascinating. I never expected ever to be a part of something like that. Movies were made in Hollywood, right?
Right.
I was impressed with the fact that it was the first movie ever made in Pittsburgh, and I was interested in seeing what was going on and doing my small part.
So you're in what we've pinpointed as two major ghoul shoots. The first, John could talk a little bit more about this, why we believe this is the first. But the first would have been this day for night shoot, and the whole premise of this. There's Sharon on the far right, far left. Paula Richards is right in the middle, and the whole premise of this filming day for night is, you can use the daylight for these, wide areas, like a large field. And the whole idea was to show this huge group of living dead kind of coming up the field and eventually onto the porch and, hammering at the door. And just to jump back for a second, this is, before the Karen Cooper image got out there, the famous image of Kyra shown. That's not even in the film, it's just a still, but that would have been more of like the 80s, mid 80s that started floating around. This was really the still that everybody saw, and that was representative of the film. And of course, when you see the film, there's nothing like this in there, and so it was just always assumed it was a publicity still taken during the day, because it's hard to get that kind of like scope, expansive shot from night shooting of low budget and not having a lot of like movie lights and so forth. But as we dug into the production and started finding out details, there's George filming right in the background, and I guess all of you are walking away from the camera, and there's Sharon on the left, Paula on the right, George is right in the middle, and all the way to the right side is Russ. So he was there. This was for the day for night, and we actually have Russ here. Where is he?
Oh,
There you are.
All right.
Hey, Russ.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you all.
Hi.
hey.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
So, Russ, Sharon mentioned to everybody that it was yourself and Jackie who got her involved in Night of the Living Dead. What do you remember about that time recruiting people to be ghouls in the movie?
Hold on, I'm taking.
Well, we put out a sort of an open call, a demand in some cases, that we needed people for the posse day, for the big roundup day. In addition to, there were other days that we recruited fewer people, but Sharon lived in the same apartment building that Jackie and I lived in, the Tudor Hall Apartments. The building is still there. So she was a close by neighbor that we were friendly with and recruited her. But we did a lot of the recruiting from our client base, people who were our clients for our commercial film business, advertising people and people that we knew in the business. And we just kind of walked the streets with a hook and recruited people.
Which is funny because the hook used to be to pull people off stage. So you were using the hook to actually get people into the film. That's interesting.
The reverse hook, yes.
So yeah, the reverse hook. So about this, so John and I have kind of pinpointed that, this shoot would have been early, or this day for night day of, many ghouls would have been early in the production. And of course, it didn't really work the way it was expected. So, this footage doesn't really exist in the film.
Right.
One shot does exist is still in the work print, which was eventually replaced in the theatrical version of the film. But what would have been the what would have been the plan to get that many people together and shoot day for night? And was there any other part of that we're missing? Maybe something that was intended but really just didn't come off, or you didn't go that far?
No, the day for night was the only thing that didn't work the way we thought it would work. In terms of recruiting people, we literally started making phone calls. People knew that we were doing a film. They didn't know a whole lot about it. Some people were eager to be in the film, others not so much. What would it mean to their careers and that sort of thing. But eventually we filled out, we had a pretty good, if you will, cattle call of people to be posse members and and legions of ghouls, or we've tried to make it look like legions of ghouls.
And so the shot that's behind me,
Yes.
that's kind of John has a theory about this. But I mean, that's basically one of the surviving day for night shots. I mean, there's
I have to say, for 1 second, John's theories sometimes frighten me.
Well, again, this leads up to the 4K restoration. I do want to say that shot, obviously, that's behind Jim. That is not on the day for night shot.
Right.
That's a different day. And
But do we think it was the same day?
I thought it was. It's not.
It was definitely the same day.
So you're thinking it's not the same day?
No, because so when I find people, I try to, because I assumed it was the same day because there are 2 very obscure ghouls that are there for that day. And I thought it would be weird, like, why would they, like, they wouldn't come back another day. They would have just been there the one day. It must have been a really long shoot. And as people have made fun of me now, the finding the moon shot and trying to figure out the day for that. So I knew that was late June. So one of the people that I found, when I talked to a family member, I always tell them, what did you tell me anything about what was going on? Even if it doesn't seem important, it might be important for something else. And how I found this person, that this person knew Lee Hartman, and the person that I was talking to, her name is Stephanie. She said, my father didn't drive, and Lee picked us up and then drove us. And then I said, okay, well, if he didn't drive and he drove back home, Lee Hartman is there on that day for that shot that that's behind Jim. And then once I took a look at that, I noticed that the hair is longer and the makeup's a little bit different. Ken Peters is there both days. Paula is there both days. And then there's like 2 more. Then Lee Hartman is there, but Lee Hartman's clothing is different. On the day for night shooting, he's just wearing a regular white shirt, but on the at the pump scene, which is what that's from, he's wearing the full tux. So that's why once, like, it seemed like an innocuous comment of just like, oh, my father didn't drive, but then it gave me the idea, like, well, why would Lee drive them back home to drive back to the set and then put on different clothes? And then I started to look and said, oh, their hair is longer.
Then when we were, what we originally thought was this was like maybe a transition shot. Like, so earlier in the day was the day for night shooting, which there's a lot of stills of that. And then while they had, maybe some people left, some other people came in, and there's some crossover, like John's saying, Paula is you could see her to the left of me. It's very obvious that it's Paula. She's got her hands out, but her father is there also, and he's not in the day for night shot. He's also a pretty easily to spot ghoul. He's like a tall guy, bald, and has like kind of like workman's clothing on. A little bit different than the, you obviously had a lot of white shirts and black pants on hand. So there's a lot of ghouls in white shirts or with sport jackets on. But some people wore their own clothing, and so he's one of the ghouls that stands out. And as John is saying, this probably led up to the filming at the gas pump, and then eventually blowing the truck up, because I think the truck was blown up that night after you filmed. So like later in the night when you filmed at the gas pump. Is that your recollection?
I really wish now that we were 56 years later that we were sophisticated enough to have kept daily logs of what was going on. But since we don't have that and we're trying to reconstruct it, I wonder if we did do a second day. Obviously, if some of the same people's hair is longer, I wonder if when we discovered that the day for night didn't work, that we recalled people and said, we had a technical problem. Can you come out Saturday or Sunday or whatever day we did? That might be a possibility.
Yeah, so an interesting thing, and Sharon might be able to answer this. So we've established Sharon's among the day for night ghouls, and then as John is saying, this truck shot, which looks like day for night, but we've now put with another group of ghouls, which includes Paula, her father, but also Chuck Craig. At some point, Sharon must have come back because here she is with Chuck Craig again. And now everybody's makeup is a lot more sophisticated. Sharon's dressed differently. Chuck has instead of like the big raccoon eyes, he's got kind of like, the derma wax, and part of his face looks like it's torn.
And is that Marilyn?
Yes, Marilyn is to
that
be,
would have been the night that she ate the bug off the tree.
Right. And this is also the same group that Roger McGovern is coming in that's his arm coming in the left side, and Heinzman is there.
Right.
And behind him is John Simpson.
Yes.
And again, this is like a lot more nuanced. You can see Sharon's makeup is just kind of like pale. Sharon's, you're kind of rolling your eyes up there. Do you remember any kind of like specific direction you were given as like okay, you were walking.
Not at all.
You're a walking corpse.
I don't know why, Sharon. It's only been 56 years.
I know.
I don't know why you don't have it at the tip of your tongue.
Right. I'd like to go back to something else, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Your comments about the length of time and people's association with the film. It was 56 years you had before you found me. And during that time, I knew it was a cult film, but I didn't think I downplayed it because I didn't think my part in it was at all important. I didn't have, until I met all these fans, you guys and the fans, well, you're that too. I really thought my part was just so minor, like any other film. The major stars are important. The walk-ons are nothing. I had no idea that the fans treasure every shot, every person in it. And they and you made me feel so welcome and such a part of the film that I truly appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Sharon, did you, in Tudor Hall, you lived on the first floor, is that correct?
I did.
Did you know Ken Peters, who lived at the end of the hall on the first floor?
Nope,
Okay.
not at all. Must have had different schedules.
Yeah.
That I didn't know.
Do you recall the length of time between that first time that you were there for the day for night and then coming back? Would it have been like several months? Would have passed?
I don't. I just have no recollection. I mean, you've got a picture of Paula and myself sitting on a porch talking to each other. She does not remember me. I do not remember her. A long time.
I can answer that.
John, what were you doing 56 years ago?
He wasn't born, so
my dad was.
Yes, thanks. I knew you would turn it into an age joke somehow.
He doesn't even he wasn't even a thought yet, So I mean, I can at least say I was one when you were filming it. But, well, no, I was I was one when it came out. I was barely one when you were filming, so at least I was around. And I like to joke that you guys knew that I was born and upcoming, and so you were making this movie for me.
Exactly.
Can I ask
to
Sharon a couple of things?
find all this fun stuff.
Can I ask Sharon a couple of things?
Yes.
Okay. Because the two things sort of hit me. So obviously you're neighbors with Russ and Jackie, and they said, "Oh, come to do this thing." And your first day is the day for Night Shot. You're just walking around, having a good time. But the second day you come back, which was in August, as I was getting to, which is a month later, you're actually there during the feasting scenes.
Yes.
And
that I remember.
So you went from, I'm just, walking around in a field to now doing something that seems to be, very, disgusting, I guess. Did you have any, and I don't think there's any shots of you actually eating anything. So I wonder
No, I was disappointed. I was disappointed I didn't get some guts.
You would have ate them?
Well, I don't know what I would have done with them. I would have smeared them on my face for sure.
Well, before you answer with anything that you remember about that, it's interesting to know. So this particular group, this is the group that's in the feasting scene. But what's very interesting about that, when this was being filmed, this particular shot, we've established that it was probably George probably understood, him being the editor and piecing the film together, that he needed, some kind of like large amount of footage to show the ghouls, basically congregating. So this particular shot is in various stages throughout the film. I mean, first they look out the window and there's literally just like one or two, kind of milling about that truck, the same shot. And then little by little, I mean, it's, a good 40 minutes goes by, and until this particular shot we're looking at is when they look out the window just before they run out to try to gas the truck up, and now there's just ghouls everywhere. So that seemed to be the important thing that George wanted to get done, probably knowing from what he had filmed that he needed some kind of like ongoing footage of the ghouls. And so he did this kind of like big establishing shot, just working the ghouls in a little at a time until they completely surround the truck. But now the interesting thing is, although this is the night that is the ghoul feasting on the remains of Tom and Judy, and Sharon is in the shot of the I think it's either it's not Roger McGovern, it's one of the guys close up chomping on something, and she's stumbling in the background. You could see the dress, but you're not shown going to the truck to grab the entrails. That's like a different group. It's there's some crossover. Chuck Craig is in that shot. I think Heinzman's in the shot. Marilyn's in the shot.
John
Sharon's not there
in that shot.
Well,
Yeah,
everyone's there except it's Rich Sanderson, Sharon, and Carol Wayne. Those are the only people that aren't there walking towards the
towards the truck. So yeah. Do we think that that was filmed late at night? Like after a lot of people left, a lot of people said, "Okay, I've had enough."
That could have been. That would certainly be logical because people did. We knew that we needed the big scenes, but then people would gradually either be dismissed or the crowd did get smaller the later it got.
And
except
truck is
for
the truck is also the
except
truck
for the
is smoldering that night. The truck is smoldering as the ghouls approach. Would that have
right.
been the night the truck was blown up, or
It's very possibly, but the truck blowing up, we held off doing that as late as we could, thinking that the Evans City watchers, the people who were watching the production, would get tired and go home, except they didn't. They just bundled themselves up in aluminum chairs. I think, if I recall correctly, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning when we actually blew the truck up. And there were still many, many people sitting around in lawn chairs, bundled up in black and blankets, waiting for the truck to be exploded.
Sharon, when I talked to you, I think if I remember correctly, you said that you actually you were there for the explosion, correct?
Yes, I think so. I'm not sure, but I did. I have a faint recollection that some of us were asked not to be in that scene. That they didn't need all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong.
is there anything? This is a question for Sharon. Is there anything else you can recall seeing being filmed that that you weren't a part of, but maybe stuck out in your memory as maybe something important or something that you don't see every day? For example, was Dwayne Jones there when you were filming, and was he on the back of the truck with holding a torch and the truck speeding off? Was there anything like that being done at that point?
I don't know whether I remember that correctly. I seem to recall that, but that could be a false memory for having seen it in the movie.
Do you recall if all of the main cast was there when you were filming?
I do not believe so. No.
I think that from what I've pieced together, that makes sense. And actually, speaking of seeing the movie, you told me something really interesting. Tell us when the first time you saw the film.
The first time I saw the film.
Yeah, because it surprised me because I had asked you about it. Yeah,
much later.
Were you not at the premiere?
No, I had moved to New York
Oh.
City. I moved to New York City just at that time, and
Okay.
was not in. I did not get an invitation because of the move. And,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So actually, to back it up, then, not when you saw the movie. When did you become aware that this movie had become a thing? It wasn't just something that you did and everybody forgot about. It was.
I think about 10 years later.
10 years after.
Yeah.
And would that have been from seeing it on television or people mentioning that they had seen it and maybe they knew in passing that you had been in it?
No. it was probably from having seen it on TV at some point. My daughter says that I made her watch it when she was 7. So, which is hard for me to believe I would do that to a child. But
Yeah, child abuse. Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, that's the age that I saw, 7 or 8. So,
Because that's
me,
what's wrong with you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, to me, that's the prime age to see it because, maybe if I had waited 10 years, I'd be like, oh, what the heck's this thing? And it just wouldn't have had the same, impact. So,
Well, it was hard. I wouldn't make a big deal out of it, but when you actually see the film, it's hard to find me there unless you're looking. I'm more in the stills, I think. But
right.
John says I was in it quite a bit more than I knew.
Yeah, you're there. But what I was interested in is that like you were just asked to be a part of this, film that some of your neighbors were making. So you didn't read a script.
No.
They might have given you like an idea of what the movie was supposed to be like, but that's what I was trying to say about what were your initial reactions where it's like, okay, today we're gonna do this feeding scene and we're gonna film people eating these two people that were just blown up in a car and they're gonna be eating arms and intestines and stuff like that. Did you go like, well, what did I get myself into? Like, do you have any like qualms about maybe this is a little too much?
No. I'm always game, so I'm fine.
Well, would that much of the plot have even been described to everybody?
No.
I mean, we're talking about, again, going back to this, or let's just use this for example. Okay, this is the first day that you and all these other folks are there, and it's okay. You're ghouls. You're the living dead, and you're just basically walking towards this house, and then there are shots of everybody pounding on the windows and doors, and but so I'm sure that was described to everybody. This is the action that we want to see.
Yes, but I had no idea what anyone else was doing. What the actors
right like why you're trying to get into the house and so forth. That wouldn't have really been explained, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't think so.
And then, as we're saying with this, this seemed to be mostly a big ghoul night. A lot of time was obviously spent on the makeup and kind of creating this mood and what they learned from. I mean, Marilyn, just on her own makeup, besides that she was making everybody else up, made this pretty scary looking makeup, and it was obviously to fill in as much as possible and create that atmosphere.
Right.
So it doesn't really seem like we really can't pinpoint too much specific action that was surrounding the truck or the truck speeding away or and ghouls going after it. That doesn't seem like this happened on this night. The most significant thing being the eating of the the victims in the truck explosion. But
Right.
Other than that, there's really no specific plot point. So it's really just like the general ghoul shots and just trying to create that atmosphere.
Well, the truck blowing up and the eating, that was the main feature for absolutely sure. I have a question for the two of you, Jim and John. At what point did you guys start wanting to really do a deep dive into finding the characters, examining the film frame by frame? When did that all start to click in your heads?
Jim, you go first.
Yeah, so me personally, it was doing my documentary Autopsy of the Dead together with Jeff Carney. Basically, almost anything that like I've ever done creatively is when it's something that I want to see happen and it's not being done. So that was around the time of the 40th anniversary. A documentary had just come out, which was One for the Fire, which is very good. But in my view and in Jeff Carney's view, we knew each other from online. We had never, met in person before. But in both of our viewpoint was that it's great hearing from all the principals, but there's got to be all these other people that we haven't heard from. And a lot of the bug, so to speak, that was put in my ear about it was probably from your commentaries. Well, the main commentary you did, Russ, with George and John Russo and Marilyn and Carl,
Yeah.
and trying to think if anybody else was in there. The principal filmmakers, you guys would point out, oh, that's Chuck Craig playing a ghoul, or there's Marilyn. That's Marilyn as the bug eating ghoul, and so that started to, put the idea in my mind. Wow, everybody had like all these other little tasks that they did, and there has to be a story there, talking to the people, unlike George and yourself, that had careers in film and in film production. There's got to be a story there, talking to the people that their main experience in making a movie was on Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
And it's such a unique, situation, because there wasn't independent film, as prevalent back then, and certainly not in Pittsburgh. There was little independent movies that popped up here and there. Something like The Flesh Eaters, the one that got you guys to change that's just a little
Right.
independent film
Right.
that was made out on Long Island. But so there was a few, but they weren't really making the splash, and didn't stand out in the early 70s, like Night of the Living Dead did among the crowd. Although I particularly really like the movie The Flesh Eaters, it was never being compared to Hitchcock's Psycho like Night of the Living Dead was.
Yeah.
So I've told you and numerous people that on like many occasions, if you were a kid in the 70s and you like this stuff, and your main outlet for seeing it was on television, there was all the Boris Karloff movies, the Hammer movies with Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee. There was all the Vincent Price. There was all these different eras and pockets of film, horror film, science fiction movies, monster movies, that you could watch. But the two that were kind of talked about in a different area were Hitchcock's Psycho and Night of the Living Dead. They were just in this different category. And somehow, another point I like to make is about the movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's not very far removed from Night of the Living Dead. It definitely inspired Night of the Living Dead, inspired the director Tobe Hooper to make this independent movie. And it's only, was it 1973? So it's 5 years, maybe 6 years, apart from Night of the Living Dead. Not very far from the same era. But unlike Psycho and unlike Night of the Living Dead, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like this taboo territory. It would never be put on television. So in the 70s, that was just something that was heard about, among young fans and so forth. If you weren't old enough to go to an R-rated movie at that point, you had no hope of seeing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it's not going to be on television. In reality, the subject matter and the title of the movie is, pretty strong, but the movie itself has very little gore, has very little on-screen violence. A lot of it is implied, and a lot of it is the taboo breaking, the crazy family of cannibals and so forth. It's more like the subject matter is what kept it off. Whereas Night of the Living Dead and Psycho, which have equally disturbing subject matter, but they kind of like, maybe because the black and white thing, and Alfred Hitchcock had a TV show, so and the people that made the TV show is the same production crew made Psycho. So even though Psycho was this kind of like, it had a lot of impact for a lot of people, it scared the crap out of a lot of adults. I had a family member, an aunt, who refused to take a shower after Psycho. This is an adult. So
I think there was a lot of
so these were the movies that really had impact, and they just kind of like they were accessible. That's the point I'm trying to get to, is that they were accessible to us younger fans at an impressionable age. That I like to think I was mature enough to understand that this was all fake, and I just at a young age I appreciated the creativity and the imagination of monster movies and science fiction films and horror movies.
And the copyright issues just made it even that much more widespread.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I tend to think that was more with cable, because cable TV just opened up the floodgates for all these smaller independent channels. In the 70s in television syndication, which is what I feel is responsible for not only making Night of the Living Dead, getting Night of the Living Dead out to the audience, finding its audience, but just about everything else that's popular at these pop culture conventions that you folks make appearances at. It all has to do with TV syndication, because even the movies that were out in the 50s and 60s that fans in the 70s and 80s were too young to see, they were constantly repeated on television. So that's what really got it out there. And you only had 3 major stations nationwide, and then you had maybe 2 or 3 other independent stations. So there was only 5 or 6 choices, and Night of the Living Dead legitimately, you guys weren't paid for it, I'm sure, but was legitimately distributed through a syndication package of horror movies.
Yeah.
And in my area, which is the New York, New Jersey, New York metropolitan area, it went to the big, Channel 7 WABC. So that was a major, it wasn't playing on, the small independent TV channel.
Right.
It was playing on the late show movie of the week, in a prime, Saturday night, spot before there was Saturday Night Live and people were staying home to watch that. Night of the Living Dead was on that Saturday night, 11:30, prime.
Right.
A spot that wasn't reserved for specifically horror movies. It wasn't like a Chiller Theater or Creature Features. It was where they were putting, big films, independent films, just whatever they deemed was going to be popular. And it made a big splash here. And I'm pretty sure it's our area. It was because of the impact it had in the New York area that our area was the broadcast area that ran a dramatization subtitle disclaimer under the news scenes. I'm not aware of it happening outside of New York, New Jersey, but I can attest that the first time I saw Night of the Living Dead, it had that dramatization subtitle.
Can I give my answer now?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because Jim gave this very long and passionate, articulate kind of answer. I'm just a geek. So I've always said, and I always apologize, Dawn of the Dead is my favorite. It's always going to be my favorite, but Night's always a close second. So I would watch Dawn of the Dead a bajillion times and just be like, oh, there's a blooper, or there's something that I never know. That's really cool. And because I love Night, it basically was the same thing, just watching these films over and over again and just trying to, this is as close as I'm going to be to like being on set or being in the film. It's just knowing a lot about it, And I remember even the first time how I met Jim is when I saw the 4K restoration and I saw that the farmhouse had 2 staircases. Like, did anyone else know this? I thought that was like really like amazing because I'm paying attention to all these different things in the film. So that's really what it boils down to, just trying to learn as much as I can from this, from this film, and then sort of being brought into this stuff. And now that I can speak to Jim and all these people, I'm still doing the same thing. But then once I was sort of officially, unofficially, sort of brought into the fold, saying, "Hey, could you do this stuff for us?" Now I feel like it's for like the greater good of the film's history to sort of find all this kind of stuff. So for me, the dial went from like 6, like, oh, this is kind of pretty fun, to now like 10 and 11, because I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for Russ. I'm doing it for Gary. I'm doing it for people that love it. And not that I'm the guy that I have this, like, Jim is the person. I just the detail person. And he's my litmus test. Like, hey, does this make sense? Does this hold water? I have this theory or whatever it may be. Right. But I find that to be as close as I can get to, like, not only being on set, but also, like, I had mentioned this, but I never met George. I never met any of these people really until a couple of years ago, and it's a regret. I never did conventions. I never cared about autographs. I still not really an autograph person, but once I started to do these conventions and sort of feel this like family kind of aspect, like I started to get it, and I get real upset because I watch the old Living Dead weekends and I'll see Daz and I'll see Derek, and I'll see all these other people, and then I see other people who I've never met that aren't with us anymore, and it bums me out. So like this stuff is like my, I guess, thank you in a way for George, because now I made all these friends. I watched the film in January and February, and I'm sitting there watching it going, Sharon Carroll, who is that? She's in there somewhere. Which one of these people is she in there? And there she is. And, being able to say that I helped sort of find her is like a really great feeling to me, that I contributed something to this film that I love so much, or something that George made that, now I have a whole group of friends that a few years ago I never had. And, how can I repay this back? So, now that I've found Sharon, but it's like she's also an incredibly sweet and lovely person, someone that I can kind of say that I'm friendly with. Like, that blows my mind. 6 months ago, I didn't know who she was, and now I'm here talking to her, and that's, hard to describe. So finding her, I keep on saying finding her, like, she was dug in the ground somewhere, but sort of bringing her into the fold, it's sort of, having people, know who she is and talk to her is one of the few couple of like things that I thought so far my life that I'm really proud of, that I contributed something to this film's history in a way. So not for me, it's like for the greater good. And there's also something else that I've found that I also put on that plane of like, I can't believe I contributed this, because to me it's kind of mind-blowing. And Sharon is also part of that as well. So I don't know if you want to talk about my other great discovery, I guess.
Yeah, so because we are
get to that, does it disappoint you when we don't, the people who were there don't have crystal clear recollections of something that happened?
Not at all.
That's part of the fun is like as much as I love Dawn, there's a lot of information about that film. Day, there's call sheets for everything. Night, there's nothing. So to me, that's what makes it fun. Like, so the way that I met Jim was from this musician. His name's Alan Holsworth. I have actually a surprising following when it comes to this musician's material. And this stuff was always very hard to like figure out how to play. And I guess I had sort of a hand in kind of figuring it out. But it's something that I did for me, that I was passionate about, that I cared for, just to, say, hey, look at all this stuff that I learned. And I kind of want to, share it with everybody. And people have been very responsive to it. But the fact that there's no, if someone did that for me, I did this really long video about how he improvises and stuff that I'm proud of, but like I had to do it because I wanted to learn it. If someone else had already done it and told it to me, I don't know if I would really care as much. And that's how I feel about like Night in a way. I don't know any of this stuff, and not a lot of people know it. Part of the fun is trying to piece that together and trying to figure out, just for my own interest, when things were shot. So if someone told me the answer, that almost doesn't make it as exciting because I want to figure it out, and a lot of the stuff that I want to know, I don't expect people to remember. And I've always said, like, especially with George, like, I never met him, but like, I don't think there's anything that I could ever ask him because, like, I would either already know the answer that he's going to give, or I would know that he would not know the answer because to him it was very inconsequential, So like so it doesn't like bother me so much as names are important. If I get names, I can kind of do the rest. But to me, talking to these people, that's what's important. So if I don't expect anything from anyone to remember anything, all that stuff is a plus. It's really
You
the
don't
fact
know.
that
You don't know what you've added to my life. I'm 80, and I have a good life. I have things I'm interested in doing every day, people I love. I'm reasonably healthy, and I just didn't expect a surprise like this that added this kind of dimension to my life, and I really love you for it.
I love you too, Sharon. You're awesome.
I mean, our whole thing of this, like, my meeting John, I was a fan of this artist that he's talking about, this guitar player, Alan Holdsworth. Probably when, I don't know, that would have been like the mid 80s, John. How old were you back then? The mid 80s. 2. Okay, so there you go. So, and the whole reason of, so years later, finding John's videos and finding them interesting is because this particular guitar player was an anomaly, to put it, as easily as possible. Any other, guitar player you could watch and you could immediately understand if you are a musician and you know something about the instrument, you could kind of see what they're doing, or you have a reference point, a starting point to understand what they're doing. And this guy was just on another planet altogether, and he affected a lot of people. And Night of the Living Dead is kind of that same way. So it's kind of like this, it was this film that for a lot of us came out of left field. It was unlike all the other movies that there were out there. So you want to know, like, as much as you can find out about it, kind of like in an effort to relive that first time that you saw it, and get that feeling from it again. And I know, like, just from Image 10, working on licensing with Image 10, we try to get that through in products. We want the people that, buy products through the different manufacturers that Image 10 is licensing the property to. We want those products to be worthwhile, to kind of like add to the feeling people got when they first saw the film. Maybe, seeing a different still, or, seeing the Night of the Living Dead branding on a product that they didn't realize or didn't expect, just gives them that little bit more, opens the door a little bit more to this property. So it's not just, or to this film, so that it's not just this black and white curio that they saw in, 15 years ago. It's like still keeping it fresh in some way. So that's really what the quest to, as a fan of the movie, first and foremost, I was disappointed, or disappointed is the wrong word, but I wasn't happy with what information was out there, and I wanted to know more. And I felt that there was like a bigger story, and it turns out that there is. And being able to get in contact with people like Sharon all these years later, it just shows us that there's still more to be discovered about this great movie. So there's my lead in into our big reveal tonight. So
You stepped on my lead in.
yeah, I don't think even Sharon knows about this. We haven't talked about it, but in John's research and digging and getting in touch with various people, he has found a family member of one of the ghoul extras who was there during the day for night. The ghoul in question is in this shot, but it turns out that his daughter was on the set that day, on the location that day, and she filmed Super 8 behind the scenes footage.
Whoa.
And here is we're gonna just show a couple screen grabs from it, but there's the gentleman in question, and he's going to be identified and revealed in greater detail in John's upcoming all the research that he's put together that's going to eventually be Unearthing the Undead, and we're going to try to spotlight these folks, one at a time, so that through social media posts and so forth, so that everybody gets their time, and we're just not throwing it all out there. So that's going to be coming soon. But along with that is this great behind the scenes footage, which you wouldn't, again, if you don't ask and you don't tell people what you're interested in, you don't find this stuff. And just the fact that it's in color, and we can see the color of what the ghouls, the makeup that the ghouls were wearing and so forth, that gives it the look in black and white is fantastic. And here's Sharon. This isn't a very good, again, this is a shot from a video dupe of probably a VHS video dupe of the Super 8 footage. And, Super 8 footage isn't that clear to begin with, but this is before she's got the dress on. Next to her is Lee Hartman.
I was going to ask if that was Lee Hartman.
That is Lee, correct, John?
Yes.
Okay. And here's another pic of Karen, and I'm sorry, Sharon. And next to her is, who's that's Bob Walcott.
Do you know who's behind Sharon? In the black shirt and white pants? That's Russ.
That's Russ, yeah. So yeah, Russ, you do pop up in that footage. Not a lot, but it's more. We've started to determine from all this behind the scenes, looking at photographs and so forth, and footage like this, is that there was obviously multiple groups of people working on the film. So
right.
Carl and Marilyn would have been in the thick, and so is Jackie Faust, and so is Betty Ellen. They're all seen putting makeup or standing around. As Sharon said, Jackie was instrumental in bringing her in, bringing Sharon into the production. And you can see that's kind of like the picnic party thing.
Right.
Lee Hartman's hanging there. It turns out almost all of the folks on this day, or a good number of them, are all artists. Bob Walcott, Bill Mogosh, Lee Hartman, they all worked at the animators. And then it turns out that our unidentified mystery ghoul here was actually an artist, which, as I said, we'll get into it as as all those people. I don't want to spoil the reveals and ruin John's thunder there, but
and it's great because
a lot of connections with artistic people that were working in either commercial art or so forth, that's just it's interesting, the connections that were there and that were made. And Sharon, actually, you're an artist today, right?
Yeah.
Is that one of your works
I am.
behind you?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Very cool. That's great.
Thank you. It's flowers growing elsewhere when they're no longer able to grow on Earth because there are no bees.
Uh,
That's an
thoughtful. Wow.
unworldly floral design.
That's cool.
So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of creatives kind of gravitated towards Night of the Living
And-
Dead, and there's a
and-
good
and
story there.
In the workaday world of Night of the Living Dead, if I had a job title, it would probably be an assistant director, as principally both on the crowd days and the posse days. It was probably be a ghoul wrangler. Because I personally knew a lot of the people. I made a lot of the calls to get them there. And so it just made sense that I would be the one saying, okay, stagger this way, go that way, that sort of thing. So that was my workaday job on set.
Was there anything that you could recall you didn't want to see people doing? I remember somebody mentioning, maybe it was Dave James saying, I don't think George wanted us to like walk like Frankenstein, but maybe I did do that anyway. So was there anything that maybe at that, even at that time,
it had to be something that was pretty obvious out of character for a ghoul by our judgment. That's almost everything was okay unless it was too far off the deep end. The other job that I had on set, I did all of the things that George did not want to do. For example, he did not want to go up in that helicopter with no door on it. That was verboten as far as he was concerned. So what footage there is, the aerial footage and all of that, I filmed that. I also filmed the Washington, D.C. sequence because George was in it. And that we purposely staged that and used 16 millimeter film for some of that, for the difference in grain structure and that kind of thing. And the same thing is true, by the way, of all of the footage with Chuck Craig on the set, the alleged news set that was at Hardman Studios. That was all filmed in 16 millimeter also. Simply because of the grain structure and that kind of thing.
Awesome. So as you're seeing, people are saying, that's incredible that kind of stuff exists, and what else is out there, and
that's why
we're trying to find it.
See, I have a theory, because with some of the people, there was a document that I was able to get from the University of Pittsburgh, and shout out to Larry, he gave me it too. Actually, and even Daniel Krause just texted me it a few days ago. And that's that list had helped me find. I found everyone sort of on that list. It might have been like 11 or 12 people on it. And then when I found them, some of those people were really obscure, that are like in the backgrounds and stuff. And it leads me to believe that if these people's names are on this, I think that list is from you guys getting everyone's name and sending them a check. So I think that's what that was for. So my dream is to find the other, that's got to be out there somewhere, that those names are recorded. They're written down somewhere. There's a some sort of check involved somewhere. That's one of my dreams to kind of discover. And again, you just don't know what's out there until you look. And who knew about this piece of paper until this year? So I'm hoping to find,
One thing that I can assure you is that everybody who was in the film was paid something, generally $25, if it was a mass scene of some sort. Now, where all of those canceled checks are and so forth would be anybody's guess. I have absolutely no idea about that.
I mean, everybody would have had to sign a release.
Yeah.
Allowing them to, or allowing Image 10 to use their likeness in the film. So, that's probably why there was also a record of certain things, or you would have like a name and address, even if it was to pay the $25. But
and Vince Stravinsky was very diligent about that.
Yeah. But that brings up a good last question. So Sharon's one of the names in the credits, but there's a lot of people who aren't. Why would her name have ended up in the credits above, several others?
To be very honest with you, that the credit list was my authorship, as well as making up the names of the alleged towns where there were rescue centers and that kind of thing. And how I was making up the credits to give them to the animators, I was doing them. I don't know if it even still exists. There was an art supply called Transfer Type, and I was transfer typing on to animation stand acetates the names that would go into the credits and the names that would be the town names and the rescue centers. And I just got tired of doing the transfer type. So Sharon's, and that's the true story. And so that's why the end credits are limited. I just ran out of time and energy doing it with this meticulous transfer type onto registration peg acetates.
See, that's good to know, because before I found Sharon, I was trying to find some sort of reason why are there some people that are in the credits and some people aren't. So I tried to see what their connections were, and it's interesting because I believe, Jim, you're gonna have to back me up on this, because I'm thinking, okay, if someone they got shot, had some major thing in the film, all the people that are also seen in the feasting scene should be in there. But Roger McGovern's name is not in the credits, and he has a close-up of him eating. So
wait, he's not in. Roger McGovern's not in the credits?
I don't think so. There's somebody
I thought he is.
There's someone that's in the credits that's eating something, and their name is not in the credits. There's at least one, maybe two people.
I mean, Carol Wayne isn't in the credits, and she got nude for the movie. So.
Yeah.
It was put forth by Herb Summer that he believed that he got in the credits because he agreed to have an explosive pinned on him and looked like he was getting shot. So we just maybe assumed
that had nothing to do with it. It was nothing more complicated than Russ Striner's lack of diligence.
So okay. Yeah, we never knew that. I would just assume that would have been somebody at the animators who had actually made those acetate, basically like cells, animation.
That's what they were. They were animation cells, and I was doing them one by hand, and on an Acme registration thing, and burnishing the transfer type, and I just gave up.
Well, that's good to know.
I had a grid paper underneath the acetates for lining them up and so forth, but they were all hand done, and they were hand done by me.
One last question we have from from somebody for Sharon was, were you given any direction on what to wear for the
No, none,
shoot?
none.
So you picked out just something that you thought would have looked normal
Yes.
for a ghoul.
We had
Or a
a
recently alive person.
Right.
we had a stash from Goodwill Industries. We had a stash of various kinds of clothing, and people could either bring their own or they could rummage through what we had from Goodwill, and that's how the costuming was done.
And Sharon, both of those dresses are yours.
The
Whether they
dresses
were
were
house
mine.
dress.
The dresses were mine, but not that white shirt.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Because they're both ripped. Both of your the dresses that you wore are ripped, so you had to rip them.
I even remember the color of the one. The shift was yellow.
Yeah. Now we have a color one of the other one, which is great to actually see what that looked like.
Yeah, there is in that Super 8 showing you with the final dress on and the pattern and all that stuff. So that's pretty cool. But so we should wrap it up before our producer reaches through the screen and strangles all of us going on long. But Sharon, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Appreciate
Thank
your time.
you guys, all of you.
And you know, as all the fans who have met you, you know, we enjoy your personality and that your good humor in embracing all of our questions and our, you know, our love of this movie. So, it's so, also thank you, Russ. Thanks for coming on. It's always interesting when you're here.
I'm just so glad I didn't hang up on you when you called me. Well, someone calls you out of the blue and says,
"Right,
were you in a movie 56 years ago?" And I go, and then you mentioned Image 10, and you mentioned Latent Image, I think. And I thought, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Maybe it's not a scam. And he didn't ask for money, so I thought it was safe.
I will say I did contact you first. I did send you I did reply to something on Facebook. And then I think I had Jim call you the next day because what he wanted to do was bigger than what I could do. And I said, that's not something that I feel comfortable doing. But if it wasn't for him, it would have been me.
Yeah. I'm just
we were up against you know, a deadline, and I figured you know, when John showed me the photographs, I think he showed me one photograph that I said that's questionable if it could be this person we've been looking for. But then he showed a more recent photograph, and I said, that's it, that's definitely her. And then you found the Facebook posting from your daughter saying that, you know, my mom was in this movie, and then I think you answered and said yes, that's me in there. So, and I think it was one of my photographs. So somewhere it
was that photo.
One of my photographs. Yeah, that photo from the internet. Yeah. But because we had that convention appearance coming up, I figured we better not wait until the next one. We better do this right now. So
we went from not knowing who this woman was to like 2 weeks later. It was so last minute that that it just blew my mind. And what I was saying before is like to also be so lucky because you find these people, but people are people. You know, you might find someone that like, wow, this person was in this film, and you realize they're maybe not a very nice person. And so far that hasn't happened. Everyone that I've talked to has been very nice, but like the fortunate, like, you know, we find Sharon after this huge mystery for 55 years. And then in 2 weeks, or maybe even less than 2 weeks, she's at this convention and then she's signing stuff for people. We meet her for the first time and she's a lovely person. You know, it's like, now you have to meet this person. It's like, oh, he's kind of like spacey or whatever. Like how fortunate. You know, we got this great person into the family, and you know, other people have said it, like you don't know until you're actually there. And I didn't for the longest time. I never went to these conventions, and then once I started going, I really, that's why I was saying before, felt bad that I didn't do it earlier, because I didn't understand there really is this interesting family dynamic. Even as a fan, seeing the actors, that in other George's films, happy to see each other. It's not like Transformers that people get paid to just show up. These are people that were friends and neighbors that hadn't seen each other in so long. And it's just incredible to be a part of it. And you won't know until you're actually there and you see these kind of interactions and you talk to these people. And I can't imagine any other movie or like string of movies or directors that has it. I mean, you have Halloween, but Halloween is, 18 movies. This is a little family that George made. I don't know any other person or director that has the same thing, but it's amazing. I'm that's why I do this stuff, because I'm so fortunate to be a part of it and have this like extra kind of family, and then everyone in it is so nice and sweet. They're not people like, I don't know if I really want to talk to that person. So it's unbelievably and I've said this before. I've been sick of guitar plenty of times in my life, plenty of times where I would thinking about giving it up because I took it too seriously. I've never been sick of this movie. So now that I'm sort of in this circle a little bit, it's mind blowing. And then on top of it, that everyone's so sweet and nice. It's amazing. So finding this stuff that's why it's like, to me, means so much, that I contributed something that I appreciate so much. Still, even if I have to email Russ a question, it's hard for me to think like, wow, I can actually email this person and they know who I am and they joke about how much of a geek I am, which is okay. But it'll never get old, and it'll never not be like a shock or just hard to believe. So I just wanted to just throw that in there before we leave.
Well, again, thank you, Russ and Sharon, for humoring us and answering our questions, and no matter how far out there they get. But
There'll be more.
We hope to, in our way, hope to keep this going. And thank you to all the people watching. They're a slice of the fandom that's out there that really appreciates this movie, and we appreciate all of them continuing to keep it going, buying merchandise, supporting the licensors who who license the property and spend a lot of money making the products. And also thanks to our producer behind the scenes there, Joe, for hanging out and
pizza on me.
Staying with it this long while we rambled on and on. But we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Nightcast. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you, Sharon. Thanks, Russ.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Good night.